Welcome, my friends. We have not done a free-for-all in many an age, so it's time to hit up the jungles of Lost Temple as Bretonnia, the Vampire Coast, the Wood Elves, and TiktaqTo take to the skies. There's some faces this battle we haven't seen in quite a few years at this point, like the Bloody Reaver Depth Guard. Super cool looking Blood Knight pirates, but not exactly known for their cost efficiency, so you don't see them very often. There are hard counters all over the place. Butterfly dragons, swarms of archers, royal hippogriffs, the works, and a highly mobile Lustrian strike force, replete with the Raptor Elite and Ripperdactyls, about to enter a feeding frenzy like the flying piranhas they are. So I jumped into some free-for-all battles with subscribers the other day, got some pretty entertaining FFA matches, probably show off at least 2 of the 3, but this one started off pretty bananas. The Duke is playing the Wood Elves, and he Vanguard deployed smack dab in the middle, right in the firing cone of the Vampire Coast, Noctilus on his Necrofex and Queen Mama Bess, which is a problem, because Enchanted Ballistics and a Gunnery Wight makes that thing shoot really fast and do a lot of damage, and the Azrai aren't exactly resilient. Death Guard Halberds have showed up to the party as well. Great stat line in Rage Ward Save and the Hunger, but not that common because they're really expensive on lower funds and generally just not that cost efficient. Wild Riders Vanguard deployed on the west side, crying. Their DLC won't be coming till December, as am I, with an army of Eternal Guard, a Waystalker, some Way Watchers, a bunch of Deepwood Scouts, and a Glady on a Forest Dragon above. And already, you can see those Arrows of Karnas targeting the best, trying to take it off the field early. For the forces of Tlaqua and the Lizardmen, looking at a really fun build here with 2 Horned Ones, 2 Feral Stegodons, the Umbral Tide, an Ancient Salamander, Skink Priest with Chain Lightning and Wind Blast for channeling the storms of magic into those big old blobs that so often characterize free-for-all battles, and of course, focusing heavily on speed and maneuverability, 2 extremely important traits when you have 3 enemies to worry about, not just 1. These bad boys have them in spades, a flying corps of famished Ripperdactyls looking for a feast. They're led by their Lord TiktaqTo, joined by the Colossalon Hunters and their vicious stat line, accompanied by the Blade of the Ancient Skies and the Mask of Heavens, which turns Rippers into a much more effective unit. Defense and lack of armor being some of their biggest weaknesses. Now for Bretonnia, they have the Knights of the Lion-Hearted, a bunch of Knights of the Realm, and a Peasant Swarm with the Damsel of the Lore of Life at its core, Alberic, and Royal Hippogriff Knights flying overhead. And remember, they'll be getting that +8 bonus for large from the Braid of Bordello, which makes them even more terrifying against single entities, and that's pretty much where they thrive. Rear charging into cavalry or taking out big dinos like a Feral Stegodon, so definitely something that Tlaqua has to worry about. Now, at the beginning of this match, things are going to get kind of weird because the Wood Elves are a natural counter to the Vampire Coast in a lot of ways. They match up pretty favorably in a 1v1 scenario, but if you Vanguard deploy in the core, in the cone of fire of their artillery, things can get pretty messy pretty fast if you're the Azrai. And the Queen Bess, well, it's firing into loose formation stuff, but its explosion is big enough that even so, it still absolutely destroys units like Deepwood Scouts, and it only took 2 volleys to take that unit pretty much off the field. So, brutal start for the Azrai, no question about it. I mean, the points value is pretty much the same for both at the moment. The Vampire Coast have taken out a full unit of Deepwood Scouts, while the Wood Elves have only really killed zombies. Now, the saving grace for the Azrai is that they have a Lord and Hero with Arrow of Karnas, which is maybe the best artillery-destroying missile in the game. So if you land 2 or 3 clean shots on the best with those Arrows of Karnas, you're in fine shape. You've destroyed a 2,000 gold monstrous artillery piece that could eviscerate your army if you aren't able to. So, like I said, the Azrai have a lot of counters to what the Vampire Coast are trying to do. They have Way Watchers, they have a lot of archers that outrange the handguns, but they've got to get rid of that Queen Bess first, and they've got to not be in these blocky phalanx formations when it lands a shot, because that's a great way to lose 2 full units of Eternal Guard, which will be pretty important here. And that's going to land for sure, right in the middle. It wasn't a perfect shot, it wasn't the cleanest shot you'll ever see, but damn, that is brutal. And that is the power of Queen Mama Bess. Even when it doesn't land a clean shot, still takes your infantry down by half HP. That's a lot of damage. I'm not sure if Flex Tape is going to fix that one, baby. Now, Way Watchers already firing into the Lamprey's Revenge. The crabs are dropping. They've already lost a model. Way Watchers do so much damage. They're so damn good. Over on the other side, Tlaqua and Bretonnia about to go at it. Looks like the Foot Squires and the Phalanxes in the front, particularly those Men-at-Arms polearms, maybe thinking about retreating, but the Feral Stegodon, a little bit too fast to get those Foot Squires out of the way. closing the gap, and the Triceratops will make its presence felt for sure. Foot Squires and Peasant Archers being run over by dinos in the front ranks. They'll start looking like Jurassic World out there in a second, while the Bloody Reaver Depth Guard charge into melee. And theirs is a unique kit. They're a lot more mobile than most other elite halberds in Total War Warhammer 2. They have very high melee attack as well, so they're a much more aggressive version, meant to hunt down monsters, but they can certainly beat the brakes off of Grail Pilgrims. They'll have no problem with that whatsoever. The Colossadon Hunters, TiktaqTo, and the Ripperdactyls moving out to the flank to get a rear charge into these Knights of Bretonnia. Horde One's first one in, and now you can see these guys are all positioned perfectly for a full flanking charge, which could decimate the Bretonnian cavalry if they're not careful. Ripperdactyls in the center, down to about 2/3 health. And over on the other side, the Azrai and the Vampire Coast are going at it, and the Wild Hunters of Kurnus moving out of the woods now. They're going to be moving directly into the flank of this Vampire Coast army to take out all the handguns, and the Queen Bess has already fallen to the arrows of Kurnus. So it wasn't useless that game, but I'd say overall probably not worth it to bring in any matchup against the Azrai, even in a free-for-all scenario, just because it's so easy to be destroyed from long range. Knights of the Realm, they're surrounded. It's gonna get bad for them pretty quick here. Ripperdactyls, Colossadon Hunters, and Horned Ones full surround off. TiktaqTo passing off that melee defense and the armor to all those, and oh my god, they just got completely munched on. More Knights of the Realm and the Knights of the Lionhearted try to dive into the rear, shut down the Umbral Tide and the Ancient Salamanders. But the nice thing about both those units is they're not actually useless in melee combat. They can hold out a little bit against these charges, against these bonus versus large cavalry. Now, one thing we are going to have to do this game is check the kill count for these Bloody Reaver Depth Guard skyrocket. They're kind of a forgotten unit, as I said. They're just so expensive on large funds, but we're playing on Ultra, which is 17,000, not 12,400 in this free-for-all as the Wild Riders charge into melee with the zombie handguns. And so that should allow those Depth Guard to be a little bit more cost-efficient in a scenario like that, and so far, they've kicked some serious ass. They are about to finish off those Battle Pilgrims as Raystorm comes down. Chain Lightning on the other side of the battlefield, and the Hippogriff Knights charging in, while the Umbral Tide rain fire from below. Hippogriff Knights got the charge in, and it shouldn't be long before they're able to finish off the Umbral Tide entirely if they do not escape, down to half HP immediately, and they didn't even have the Braid of Bordello active on them because Albrecht was fighting elsewhere. Ripperdactyl is trying to tie them down, giving those Umbral Tide more time to escape, while the Strike Force of Tlaqua, which is the core, that Horde 1 core, those elite flyers alongside TiktaqTo, ripped open the Knights of the Lionhearted, and the Royal Hippogriff Knights came to the wrong neighborhood, mother trucker. Umbral Tide spewing lava into them. They did manage to get a heal off at the last second, so they might manage to survive, but not without losing at least one model, I would think. It's a great combo. Ripperdactyls are meant for killing infantry, but they have the mass to tie up those Royal Hippogriff Knights, and with the Umbral Tide firing in with all their bonus for large, it was way too much for them. Now, the Forest Dragon is also in the wrong neighborhood. You have to be so careful with your single entities against a firepower faction like the Vampire Coast. You put Necrofax Colossus and Noctilus in there, put a bunch of handguns and all that armor piercing in there, and a huge hitbox like the Glady has atop her Serpent, and things might get nasty super quick. She was at 2/3 health, now she's at 1/3 health, and Deck Gunner's firing in, Necrofax firing in. It's too much for the Glady, and she will shatter under a torrent of armor-piercing handgun fire. That's a big loss. She will not be returning. Forest Dragon could have been really useful for gooning out Noctilus and his Necrofax. On this side, the Feral Stegodons and the Horned Ones on the hunt, shutting down the Peasant Archers. Tlaqua in second place, Alan B and Bordello in third, the Duke, the Azrai, the Wood Elves in fourth for the moment, and Vampire Coast with a commanding lead. Looks like he is winning on his side against the Wood Elves. Horned Ones, the clever girls that they are, and the Ripperdactyls doing exactly what their name implies. They rip, they tear, their mouths are quite unfair. CA, please nerf, they're obviously OP. They're coming in for another charge from on high, and most of the Ripperdactyls are pretty healthy at the moment. The Lore of Lifecaster is still alive, supporting Albrecht, and might get the Royal Hippogriff Knights back into this fight as well. And it looks like the Horned Ones are feasting on the Peasant Archers in the rear. And the forces of Bordelot running out of steam at this point. Albrecht looking to escape, but all those flyers going after him. They might just be able to close the gap if he decides to commit elsewhere. Albrecht is a bit faster than all those forces, but if he lands, they can land, and they might get that full surround off. Still going for a Civil War style line battle here. Wild Riders charging into the cannons, and the carronades should finally, maybe not actually, they might not fall in time, but the Way Watchers and Deepwood Scouts firing in on the cannons should be able to kill off those cannon crews for good. But Noctilus is relatively healthy and can support himself with the Invocation of Nehek. Looks like the Royal Hippogriff Knights did return to the fray, but they're on slivers of HP, duking it out with Horned Ones, Colossadon Hunters, and TiktaqTo coming in with the Blade of the Ancient Skies and the Mask of Tlaqua, and that looks like it's going to be too much for the forces of Bretonnia, for their flyers, and the Lizardmen with their Air Force, proving to be quite a potent combination. You don't see it too often, you don't see TiktaqTo very often, but again, this kind of strat is a lot more viable when you're talking about a 17,000 funds battle and in a free-for-all scenario, as opposed to a 1v1, where you gotta be a little bit more meta-focused if you want to win competitively. Free-for-alls, a lot more things are viable, and in some ways I think that makes them a lot more fun, or at least a nice change of pace. Handguns layering in their fire. Vampire Coast done a good job protecting their backline, and those Bloody Reaver Depth Guard are still full HP because of the hunger as Noctilus, Invocation of Nehek himself. They're up to 110 kills already, and they've shown no signs of slowing down. 45 out of 45 models. No heals have gone their way, just the hunger, so they have been fully self-sufficient, which is impressive. That's what you want from your elites. You don't want to have to do anything for them. You want them to run into melee and beat anything they touch. Now, friendly fire won't exactly help. They finally lost 2 models because of Noctilus. He's just like, you know what? Screw you 2 guys in particular. But on the other side, myself and Alan decided to, you know, have a little bit of a truce. I was going to finish off the rest of the Bretonnian army. No problem whatsoever. I had more than enough to kill them. I said, I shall keep you alive, and we'll throw some wrenches into the plans of the Azrai and the Vampire Coast. It's another thing about free-for-alls that makes them pretty fun. Everything about them is just more asymmetrical. You have a lot more choices, a lot more strategies available at your disposal, and Albrecht can just go in, come out of nowhere, and RKO a poor gunnery wight and take him off the field if he decides to stick and fight in that duel. We've got Tom Peets, or Tempit, or whatever the hell his mount's name is. We got the title call coming in from Albrecht de Bordelot, doing some damage to the low armor of the Eternal Guard and of those archers, and the Bloody Reaver Depth Guard getting focus fire now by the Way Watchers, while the gunnery wight gets gooned out by the Hippogriff. Man, those Depth Guard were doing so great for so long, but I guess Enrage has not come back off cooldown, and they're already down to critical binding, and that is one of the biggest issues they face. They just get dumpstered by armor-piercing anything. They don't have a lot of HP, less than 5,000 on large, which is a good 30%, 40% less than you'll see from units like Phoenix Guard, for example. So, Ripperdactyls coming in, Chain Lightning dropping on top of the Bretonnians and on top of the Deccan mob. Looks like TiktaqTo is coming in to try to goon out Albrecht. The truce is broken. We're not quite able to get rid of Albrecht de Bordelot, and Bretonnia sending everything in they possibly can, while the Umbral Tide fires at Noctilus and that Necrofax Colossus. Pajad and the Vampire Coast have a decent lead at the moment, about 5,000 over third place and Tlaqua. The Duke is in second, but quickly running out of his win conditions. The Way Watchers, the Deepwood Scouts are being swarmed by all these flyers. Albrecht is still alive. Alan will have to pull off a miracle to get back into this game, but he hasn't done poorly overall. The Hippogriff play was pretty solid overall, especially with Albrecht himself. And the fact that he's still alive means he could strike the head off a snake and kill Noctilus or some of these other high-value threats. But this is why in free-for-alls I love going for the highly mobile strike force builds with a lot of elite cavalry, with a lot of elite flyers. It allows you to quickly reposition and strike at stuff once the battle lines start breaking down. And so the Horned Ones are still alive. They could run down the Eternal Guard, the Way Watchers, and all those things, while TiktaqTo, the Colossadon Hunters, and the Ripperdactyls fly around and wait for those perfect engagements on someone like Count Noctilus. full surround off on him. He will not be around for particularly long. And all the flyers are looking pretty healthy. I'm in second place now, down by about 3,000 or so. And this is where things get scary because you don't know if there are enough points left on the field to actually take the battle. It's a 3,500 point lead. That can evaporate pretty quickly. And whoever's last man standing does get that additional bonus. I'm still not sure how that even works. I think it's a percentage of points based on how many units you had left at the end. So my army's pretty tattered except for the flyers. I've lost a large percentage of my own army, so probably not going to get that many points for being last man standing, but will be the last man standing. And a gorgeous point-blank shot from Noctilus into Albric will maybe shatter him off for good. But now the flyers can gorge themselves on shoe leather and putrid flesh and I guess the peg leg of the Necrofex Gundam, which falls. Noctilus is dead. Beastslayers of Bastogne making their last stand. And at this point, I can pretty much just go in, commit everything, and it will be a rout for everyone on the field. And Chain Lightning, I actually pulled everything away to set up the Chain Lightning there. The Vortex was not particularly good, but it doesn't matter. TiktaqTo is full HP. It didn't even have heals this game, and he's been solid. Now, again, you don't bring TiktaqTo for his own combat potential. He's not a very good lord, but if you're going for a Ripperdactyl core, it's thematic, and he actually does make them quite a bit better with that plus 23 armor and plus 9 melee defense in an AoE. The Mask of Heavens is quite good in that capacity. So, still behind the Vampire Coast, there's a few units of Wood Elves left, and Jurassic Park can bully them. Bully them about the fact they're not getting their DLC till December, which is... Why is this happening? And bully them just because they're easy to munch on and easy dinner. They're easy prey at this point. Just a Waystalker and a few Eternal Guard. Yeah, I cannot believe. Well, I can't believe it's happening. It just sucks, man. Like another month with no new content is a little bit sad face for sure. But we'll get through it together, my friends. There's still epic free-for-alls to be had, and this was a good one. Won by 900 points, which, if you know how free-for-all scoring works, is pretty minuscule. That's about the cost of like a peasant unit, or maybe a teeny bit more. I mean, there was not a whole lot separating us. Last man standing was the only thing that kicked me over the edge, and it barely did so. Honestly, making that truce with Alan B and with the forces of Border Low probably hurt me. I could have made up that difference even more if I had just killed Albric on my side, but I went for the truce because it was fun, and it allowed him to make a little bit more impact on the battle. And it's no fun to just lose your entire army and then not get to play for the rest of the game. But yeah, that could have ended up biting me in the ass. Thankfully, it did not. But Jad played that pretty well. Got 18,000 points. The Duke in 13,600, and Alan at 11,600. But overall, pretty close free-for-all game, and I was quite happy with how the Ripperdactyl core worked in that one. I have played it in some 1v1 scenarios before. It can be okay, but overall there are much stronger Lizardman 1v1 builds. But in free-for-all, you get a Horde 1 core, you get the Ancient Stegodons, the Ancient Salamanders. It's a pretty well-balanced build, but it's one where you don't have to necessarily commit to any particular engagement. You can quickly reevaluate and go somewhere else entirely and get your points the best ways you can. And that asymmetry is, I think, at the core of what makes free-for-all so special and so much fun. Wood Elves, their Wild Rider attack is probably what hurt them the most. They fed a lot of points by not getting a lot of kills with those guys, and they are a bit fragile, so if you don't get the right engagement with them, they will feed a lot of points because they're expensive. And Border Low did what they could, but in the end, the Ripperdactyls and TiktaqTo feasted, and they had a grand old time. Hope you guys enjoyed.